Hello, my name is Darcy and I am a conceptual artist.
Hello Darcy, what is the concept behind your work?
So the concept behind my work is that it is enacting art theory as art practice and mainly focusing in on the theory side of things with the philosophy of intentionalism.
What is your preferred medium and why?
My preferred medium is conversation. So I enact theory and philosophy in art by inviting other artists to have a conversation about artistic intention. And we usually use like the studio as the environment because it's like, where artists reside. And yeah, I just invite them in and we all have a conversation about it.
And how did your practice bring you to the conversation?
So basically, my work, like previously, before I got to this point that became like about dialogue and like participation, was just not as conceptual. Like I probably wouldn't have called myself a conceptual artist, and it was like more about sort of just creating an environment, and then as time went on, I was consistently asking myself like ontological questions about art. It made me realise that to develop my practice, like it needed to become art that was on art. So I decided to have the conversations to talk about artistic intention so that I could study art as an art form and look at things that concern artistic intention, like how audiences are going to interpret a work, artistic agency, authorship, especially in the age of like new media art where other artists' works are being co-opted. I would say it came from a place of wanting to make the work more conceptual, and it got to the point where it literally became the concept as the art itself. The work also features like documentation as well, which is obviously like a tricky subject because you don't want to portray the original work, the original live work. Like there's the whole question around if the recording of the sound of like the sound piece or the performance or whatever it is the same work or if it's an extension of it or that kind of thing. So I have written an essay, and it's fragmented and sort of tries to follow the same like dialogical format of a conversation to try and stay true to the original work, but to make it apparent that it is in fact an offcut, like it's a work in and of itself, like it's not the original work.
Okay. Is your work directed exclusively to members of the art world or to the masses?
Yeah, that's like another problem. Like it's like a problem I've had with the work, like because I like to look at like the moral issues to do with it. So I would get worried that the work was sort of like exclusionary because I only have artists come in to talk in the conversations, and it's sort of like I worried that it was sending across the message that art itself, wouldn't be for the masses, and it would only be for this exclusionary artist group. Especially when you consider the fact that conversation art is really rooted in like sort of a learning atmosphere and like useful art and art that's used to preach something or for people to learn about art, and I want to stay away from that. So on top of like the fact I'm staying away from that and that I only have artists in, I worried that it will come across as exclusionary. But now I feel like I've developed it to a point where it's for the masses and artists, because the work is going to be shown a degree show outside of the Peter Scott Gallery in the Great Hall foyer, and it's going to be so that people will go into the Peter Scott and see the work that's going to be in there. Like they'll see your paintings, dude, and then they'll come out and they'll see that you're participating in the conversation, and your paintings will be spoken about in the conversation. So it gives it like context, I think, and I think that opens it up to a wider audience. But I will only have artists in the conversations themselves because I feel like that's what makes most sense. If it's the artist creating the work, it makes most sense to talk about the theory of the work with artists themselves, because they of all people are gonna be most interested in and be able to talk about like perception of artworks the most. Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, cool. How does an artist medium affect the outcome of your work? Say if you had like a bunch of painters, a bunch of new media artists, drawers, video artists type of thing. How does that affect the outcome?
I would say that I purposefully sort of like play devil's advocate in that sense. Like the work is like a free-flowing conversation. Like people, you know, are just adding their opinions on the questions that I pose in the conversations. So in that sense, it's scripted, but in that sense, it's not scripted. I mean, but in the sense that it is scripted, I do purposely like invite people that will be juxtaposing, like formalists versus new media artists, or like people with conceptual practices versus drawers, so that I can get like the best conversation possible. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
It seems to me that your role in curating these works is more of that of someone working with collage.
Yeah, I would say like the looking at like the artist's role is really interesting to me. Like obviously it works its way when you're looking at, you know, an artist's intention, but also just looking at like the way that an artist can like sort of like act as a curator or just dip in and out of different mediums, like curator, collage worker, archivist, critic. Like that is so interesting, I think. So I think that's like probably relevant to like what we talk about in the conversations themselves. Like it's like there's this like sort of like duality. The conversations are like on interpretation, and then we talk about other people's work and interpret that in the conversation, but then we also interpret the conversation in conversation, and the conversation is on interpretation. So it's sort of like this multi-layered like cycle.
It's like looking at this photograph.
Yeah, so like it's like I'll be like in the works themselves, like me acting as mediator or artist, like literally everything is called into question. Like it's like this just like open dialogue of like research. It's just like ongoing, ever flowing, and that's what I would say. The original question was like, wait, what am I like?
Are you a collagist?
Yeah. Oh, I guess in a sense I am, and that's also something that we can talk about in a conversation.
Is this a conversation?
It is, yeah, actually.
And finally, where do you see your work going in the future?
I would say that I probably would try and keep the conversations, but push certain elements, like in terms of like how the work is documented or recorded, like try and look at other ways to do that. Like one of my main inspirations is the Art Language group, and they obviously had like extensive collection of works, and they explored like the idea of like practice being theory, and like some of the ways they did that was by like using paintings or like archives. I don't know, so pushing documentation, I would say, and also looking at ways that I can find like artist communities outside of art school, because right now that's my context, but the work goes where other artists go, so I need to contextualize it outside of university. Yeah, that's right.
One final comment is it's very much like a documentation of the evolution of art, really.
Yeah, it is. It's like questioning what art is.
But it's also an artwork
as art.
at the same time.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Like, at least I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, but like a lot of work can do that. I think a lot of work questions what art is in its work itself, and every artwork I think should address that.
Cool. Thank you very much, Darcy.
Thank you.